All right, this is group 2 webinar for module 4 for the readings. The first question is, how do the articles define Islamophobia?
Out of the articles, go ahead.
We're going to say the same thing. Well, they define it in confronting Islamophobia in education as having a rational fear of or prejudice towards Muslim people who may appear to be Muslim.
In that same article, I saw that it said around like 2006 that nearly half of the Americans had a negative view of Islam, and that was 7 percentage points higher than in the 10 months after September 11th. So, and a lot of people, when surveyed about Islam, the words like violence and hatred, terrorists were some of the common words that came up with them.
Right. I also thought about that statistic being very interesting and surprising that it grew. You would think that the levels of distrust or the prejudice, stereotyping would be higher directly after the attack, but it's clearly, have ripple effects that are still affecting kids not who've even born during that time or obviously aren't associated. So it's kind of definitely something to keep in mind in our classroom.
All right, question number 2. How are Arab American parents involved in their children's education?
Well, according to the Al-Khatib and Al-Hadibi and Al-Khatib 2015 article, it said that the family involvement is low, and it's basically low due to the language barriers, but the mothers are more involved than the fathers, and there's more involvement at the home. And the parents want to be involved, so they make their home conducive to the learning and basically help with homework.
In that same article, it mentioned also that the mothers expressed willingness to participate in school activities if they were requested to do so. So I think it's kind of on us also as educators to reach out to those parents and let them know that they are welcome into our school and that we do want them to be more involved in school and not just at home.
Right. I found it interesting. They made a note in the article that, it's really important as educators throughout this course we're learning like how much we need to understand people that are different from us in our classroom, whether it's students of color or immigrant students or Arab immigrants. They made that note that it's normal in American culture, and I say this all the time as a teacher. If a kid is in trouble with me, I say, look at me when I'm speaking to you. But Arab culture, they're looking at the floor because it would be disrespectful to make eye contact with a secretarian or an adult. Where in my upbringing, not making eye contact is disrespectful. Kid is not listening or doesn't care what I'm telling them. So, really learning those nuances, culture to culture, and students to students, so you're not wrong assumptions about the child and how they're perceiving you.
I thought it was interesting too in that same article, and kind of going along with the same thing that you mentioned, that I should also speak to extended members of the family, so that instead of that they also are heavily involved, so they can give just as much insight, or they might want to participate, in the school setting instead of the parents, or even with the parents. So, when extending those invites to, whether it's to meetings about like IEP meetings, if the kid's going to be identified, or if it's, PTO events, that the extension should go to the whole family and not just just, the immediate family.
I know when we've had like parent-teacher conferences, some of the families of like the Arab descent have brought in not just parents but grandparents and sometimes aunts and uncles have also come up. So it's like a large group of them that like to come in and be involved in that. And that's not something we see within, the white culture a lot. So I thought it was really interesting to see how involved all the family members were within even just a parent-teacher conference.
Do some of those family members act as interpreters as well?
Sometimes it just depended on how much English the parents knew because we didn't have translators for them available.
Oh, okay.
So.
And I know that's something that my district has, at all of our staff development meetings, they've been talking about using the language line that we have available. So if a situation like that does come up, that we should be including them in the meetings, just so that we don't deter the families away from not coming, or the meeting isn't as productive as it could be.
Does the language line include interpreters, or that family members?
They are interpreters, so you call them on the phone and you tell them which language you need, and then they become part of your meeting.
That's
We
great.
don't need it very often, but when we do need it, it is very good.
That's a resource.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, question number 3. In what ways do refugee children experience schooling?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Hillary.
So with this one, I found it interesting because they mentioned that the refugee children could have very limited or interrupted schooling, whether it's because they are on the run or they're not allowed to come to school in their native countries, that when they come to our schools in America, they're not used to a structured full day, full week of schooling, that it's very chopped up, it's very interrupted for them. And so it makes it very difficult for them to come to our schools. So that's something we need to consider with those kids. And that, we need to take that into consideration when looking at our assignments, looking at the structure of our classroom, the daily, day-to-day tasks that we're asking them to engage in.
I also thought it was really interesting that it was the bilingual and education article talking about how language barriers result in a lot of kids being misidentified as special ed. Just kind of like, that really made me think of how much that affects the student, of course, but also the special ed staff and teacher, and how it really misallocates their time and their resources to the wrong kid. It's like giving the wrong service to that kid, and kind of, it just seems archaic to say, they can't speak English, so they don't know anything, or they have learning disability, like seeing language barrier as a disability. Like, I was just like, wow. But I also, in the day-to-day school life, where it is so overwhelming, and so there's so much to consider and so much pressure on teachers and schools to understand why they do that, is kind of like a band-aid solution. But I don't know, that really stood out to me as something to think about and kind of to look for as a teacher and advocate for immigrant children, saying, like, I don't think that they should be viewed this way, with administrators, etc.
I know, being a SPED teacher, when we do a lot of eligibility and kind of identification for students coming into our programs, there is a section that we look at that where we have to kind of look back on their background, where are they from, how many schools have they been to within the last year, for any culture of students, because we have a lot of students who are adopted, but also ones that live with different family members and get moved throughout different households and states throughout just 1 year. And I know that that's something, at least in my school district, that we try to kind of look back and say, okay, is there gap in learning due to them not having a stable home environment, or is it due to like actual disabilities or a learning disability that they have? But I'm sure in like California and other states like that, where they have more of a migrant population and immigrant population, that it is a lot harder to kind of determine what the true gap is, or the cause of the gap is for them.
Right. Yeah, it's almost, are the EL teachers involved in that process, Jessica? Or okay, so
yes,
they can kind of help tell or gauge whether it's a language barrier.
Yeah, and we try to. I know not in my school district that I'm currently in, but like in the school district where I grew up and stuff, there's a large ELL community within there that we serve, and they try to do like. The school psychologist would try to do the testing, the SPED testing, I guess you would call it, in their native language, in their home language, to get kind of see that as not as a barrier for them.
Ours does something similar, that they use a different test when they're testing a student that has a language barrier, because, it kind of goes along with what you were saying, Lizzie, that is it a language barrier that's causing the students to really struggle, or is it an actual disability? And by using the student's native language, it helps really differentiate that. We have a different person who comes in and does it as well, just because of, you want to make it as authentic as you can. And, I know the district that I worked in previously, because my current district, we don't have very much diversity in reality. I worked in previously, we had somebody else that would come in and do the testing for those students specifically.
And back to the refugee, the schooling for the refugee children, I'm wondering if the counselors also need to be very much involved, just because of the traumatic experiences those children have been through.
Absolutely.
I'm sure like school social workers and stuff too. I know I've seen just an increase in school social workers at a lot of schools that previously didn't have them, at least around here in Kansas, partly due to, having different students from different cultures and just the mental health epidemic that's going on right now. But I know that they do help out a lot in the community for migrant families that need that help, that community outreach piece. So.
Yeah.
All right.
I think a recent theme across all the articles was that there's a huge lack of studies about immigrant and refugee children and what they're experiencing in school. So I think it's important that as a society, we're having a lot more information and conversations about schooling experience for students of color, and that will just need to continue to grow. But the next thing that we need to really examine and research and be better at including is immigrant and refugee children. Hopefully that will change over time. It seems like there's more focus on them now than previously.
All right, we are going to end this recording, and then we will start back up with question number 4 on the part 2.